Hello.
Good morning. Can everyone hear us?
Yeah, just
Do a sound check.
just let us know, someone, if you can hear. Okay.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to look in the
You sound
chat.
good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, my good wife. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. This is our second Tuesday show that we are doing every Tuesday morning, and it's called
Story.
His.
His story time.
So we kicked. You just came back. Okay, here we are. Okay, sorry about that.
We have no idea what happened.
Nope, we don't know what happened, but we're here. And this is Tuesday morning. It's 11:06 Eastern Standard Time. We appreciate y'all coming on. I saw Jay here and Jane Spitfire, Witness Underground, and Ricky Bobby. Hi, Ricky Bobby.
Hello.
Thanks for getting up early to watch us. Beverly, Harward. Hi, Beverly. Good that you're on. We've got an interesting program today. As I was saying, the Tuesday program is different than the Wednesday. The Tuesday's usually a topic, something about maybe truth, maybe things that are false, and we discuss them.
Everything you've been told is a lie. That's basically that's the theme. History, government, things we've been told. It's not true. Maybe some of it's true. Maybe. Most of it's not. And people are coming to find that out and realize that.
Before we get started, though, we have an important message that we need to put out there. It's an awareness. What do they call that? Public awareness. We heard about this last night, and Samuel Haw has been missing. He is the son of, what's his first name? Martin Haw. Martin and his wife are in Pennsylvania. They're the ones that were really getting things going in Pennsylvania. and Martin testified. He also was an elder, and his daughter was molested. You can see his story on Martin Haw, but the announcement that we have is his son Samuel Ryan Haw is missing. We do not have more details than that. They've already put out a missing person report, and he's 21 years old. He has red hair. He's 5'5", and he was last heard from on April 29th in the Charlotte Mecklenburg vicinity. So if anyone has seen him, please, you can call 311. That's the missing person hotline. So we hope that Samuel is found. We hope that he's found safe. Please put this out there. Please let your Facebook and Discord, I know it was on Discord last night. I put it on the Liberati. And for just June Nicholson, she knows the family personally, and she had done an interview with the mom. So she may have more details, I don't know. But anyway, that's the public announcement. So thank you, Vern. So today's program is called Strings Attached. Who's pulling your strings?
Yeah. That kind of references a story that a lot of us may know. It's called Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a story of a father who was a woodcutter, carver, who proceeded to make a marionette, a puppet out of wood. And this puppet came to life. And one of the features and interesting parts of it is that every time he told an untruth, a lie, his wooden nose would grow longer and longer. Do you believe that? Well, that's the story. Mm-hmm. That's the story. That's his story. But it's really quite a story, because there's so much layered into that story about human nature and about what we need to basically look out for in our lives. Mm-hmm. And it's a good story, even though it's not true. But what the lessons and the information that we can gather from it is helpful, and that would be true. So I think we're going to watch it.
Yeah, if you want to play the
parts of it.
Pinocchio video.
And then we can discuss it later.
It's by, actually it's Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he's from Canada. He's a clinical psychologist. He's written books, and he gives world tours. So you're probably familiar with Dr. Jordan Peterson. No sound.
No sound.
It's a journey to the depths. So it's a journey. I'm going to show you something from Pinocchio. Now, this is an initiation ritual. It's a journey to the depths. So it's a journey to the underworld. It's the consequence of a collapse in previous personality and the disintegration of that previous personality into a chaotic state prior to rebirth. Now, what happens in Pinocchio, which, by the way, was released at about the same time that World War II was brewing, and which also contains one of the best representations of the individual motivations for fascism that I've ever seen anywhere. That's the scenes that are associated with Pleasure Island. Remember, all the puppet is trying to become a real boy, right? So he's a marionette to begin with. Something else is pulling his strings. Well, for Jung, that's your habitual state of being. Something else is pulling your strings. Even the idea that you're autonomous is the consequence of something else pulling your strings. And for Jung, what you needed to do was find out exactly who and what is pulling your strings and decide if that's the direction in which you want to go. And that's really what happens to Pinocchio, because we're going to watch Pinocchio, part of it, in the Pinocchio story. He starts out as a marionette. Now, he's a marionette made by a good father, because Geppetto is a good father. He's a good craftsman and so on. So he's a marionette with a benevolent puppeteer. But as soon as he develops some autonomy, then he becomes prey to forces that are elements of the demonic archetype. In fact, the worst bad guy in the entire movie turns into Satan himself at one point in the movie. He basically has horns and a bright red face, and he manifests himself as so terrifying that the coyote, wolf, fox, and the cat that are trying to corrupt Pinocchio are terrified, because they get like, they're criminals, they're petty criminals and deceptive and so forth. But when they get a look at who's pulling their strings, it's enough to terrify them. And so Pinocchio goes through a series of temptations of various sorts, including a Freudian temptation. And the Freudian temptation is to remain weak and sickly instead of becoming a real person. So it's an Oedipal problem. And another problem that faces Pinocchio is that he's offered false celebrity as a way of solving his life's problems. So he's offered the opportunity to become an actor. And what that means is a deceitful fake who's constructed a persona that makes him appear far more valuable than he really is. So the movie outlines two pathological modes of movement towards maturity. One being a phony, and the other taking the easy way out and hyper valuing all your pathology so that you become dependent. So anyways, and then another mode of pathological development is offered to Pinocchio. Which is to do nothing but engage in short-term impulsive and destructive play. And that's on Pleasure Island. But when he goes to Pleasure Island, he finds that it's actually ruled by demonic forces with faceless entities who are transforming all the pleasure-seeking marionettes to braying donkeys who are slaves. It's like, so Pinocchio escapes from that, and he does it basically by jumping into the unknown, and that's where we're going to start our exposure to his initiation. Okay, so now you can imagine what's happened is he was on Pleasure Island and everything went to hell fundamentally. And so he jumped into the water to escape from that, and that's equivalent to plunging into chaos. And so chaos was an escape from pathological tyranny. And now he's tried to go home. So this is the psyche in its search for maturation runs into an obstacle, which is the tyrannical element of the Great Father that it cannot cope with, and it trots home, runs home. It's a defeat. Typical part of a hero story is the initial defeat of the hero when he encounters usually either the terrible Great Father or the terrible Great Mother. So this is a retrogressive, Jung would call this retrogressive restoration of the persona. So it's sort of like maybe you're a well-adapted adolescent and you live at home and you're a happy adolescent and everything's good at home, and then you go out to try to be an adult and you fail, and then when you come back home you try to act like a happy adolescent again, but you're not. What you are, in fact, is an unhappy adult. And if you move back to the happy adolescent mode of being, then it's false and pathological. You can't go home again, another typical motif in literature. Now, the cricket, I can't tell you everything about this story. I can tell you a couple of strange things about it. One is that the cricket is Jiminy Cricket, right? And the initials of Jiminy Cricket are JC. And Jiminy Cricket was a common Southern American mild form of cursing. It's the equivalent of Jesus Christ. And so you might think, and of course, the cricket is Pinocchio's conscience. And well, so then you might ask yourself, why in the world would a pejorative, mildly pejorative term for Jesus Christ be applied to a cricket who's guiding a puppet into the water to rescue his father from a whale? Why would any of that happen? And the answer to that is why. You can't say why you know or what it is that you know. But the mere fact that it makes sense, and it does, is an indication from a Jungian perspective that you're operating at an archetypal level. You understand this. And so I could say, here's an example of why the cricket is a bug. Well, things bug you, right? We say that, things bug me. Well, you should do something about the things that bug you, because that's your conscience calling to you. It's destiny in some sense manifesting itself as an unconscious impulse. That really bugs me. Means, if you can, you should do something about it, because you think about it, man, there's a lot of things out there that might bug you, but lots of them don't, but some of them do. Well, why do those bug you and not the other things? Well, that's a complicated question, but one potential answer to it is that there's part of your psyche that's oriented towards further development. Jung would call that the self. And that's like the totality of everything that you could be. And it's a strange sort of entity in some sense, because it's partly potential, and it's potential that expands across time. But the way that your potential totality calls to you in the present is by placing things in front of you that are your problem. And they announce themselves as your problem, and they do that by bothering you. So then if you pick up the task of fixing the things that bothers you, then you find the pathway to further expansion of your personality. So, and that's what's happening with Pinocchio. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about the Pinocchio movie, and that makes it incredibly sophisticated, is that despite the fact that the cricket is an avatar of Christ, so to speak, the cricket has things to learn just like Pinocchio. And so that's very cool, because it's so cool, it's so sophisticated, because it means that you do have a conscience that guides you. But until you establish a dialogue with it, both you and the conscience are immature. You have to establish a conscious dialogue with it, and then interact together in a manner that propels your development across time. And that'll stop you from being a marionette of forces that would make you a braying donkey who does nothing but slave away in salt mines. So, okay, so Pinocchio goes home. That doesn't work, and that's where we're going to start here. Okay, so what's happened there? Well, many, many things at multiple levels of reality simultaneously. And that's the characteristic of an archetypal story. So on one level, Pinocchio's too old to go home. He can't go home to his father, because in some sense he's already transcended his father. So there are things, for example, that your father can't help you with, and the reason for that is that he doesn't know any more about the situation than you do, and he can't. And so that's where his knowledge limits out. So that would be sort of on the personal level. And then on the transpersonal level, which would be the deeper archetypal level, what's happening to Pinocchio is exactly what Nietzsche described at the end of the 19th century. Because remember that Geppetto is his creator, and now he's dead, he's gone. And so Pinocchio is bereft of placement, so to speak. His soul has been corrupted, and he doesn't know what to do about it. And when he returns to his family home, or when he returns to his tradition, what he finds is nothing. Okay, so then what happens? Well, this is another thing that you'll swallow with just no problem whatsoever. Well, this dove comes along that's sort of golden and glowing and drops a note right in front of him. Now, you may remember, and perhaps you don't, but the star from which the dove comes is a representation of the blue fairy. And the blue fairy is the positive element of the unknown in the Pinocchio movie. And so what it basically is saying, that when you're despairing because your father has died and your tradition has nothing to offer, that the positive element of the unknown may provide you with a message about where to go if you pay enough attention. That would be an intuition, or it would be the automatic attraction of your interest to a new thing by forces that you do not understand. So one of the real ways of coming to grips with the idea of the active unconscious is to understand that you cannot control what you're interested in. And so then you might ask, well, if it's not you, what is it? And if you think about that problem long enough, you'll start to understand what Jung was talking about, because that is the way that you can understand in your own life that the things that direct you as a being are not things that you consciously choose. In fact, they're not even things that you can consciously choose. They're directed by other forces. So anyways, the dove drops a message in front of Pinocchio and the cricket. Now it's the cricket that reads it. So it's the same idea as what bugs you, so to speak. The cricket is the interpreter. Okay, so now what have we found out? Well, we found out that God the Father and God the Father, the Creator, are not in fact dead, which is what Nietzsche pronounced, but alive in some weird way in this horrible creature at the bottom of the ocean. And so what does Pinocchio decide to do? He decides to go find him. That's actually what you're doing at university, by the way. For all the chaos that you experience when you come to university and all the uncertainty and all the doubt, what you're trying to do is to resurrect your dead father from the bottom of the ocean. And if you do that, you won't be a marionette. And if you don't, you will be. Now this is very interesting because the conscience here plays a very dichotomous role. So on the one hand, Pinocchio is often ahead of his conscience, so to speak. So he's taking the leading role, and the dialogue is kind of choppy and neither of them know exactly what they're doing. But in this situation, it's very paradoxical because you can see Pinocchio's been half turned into brain jackass at this point. Something you might well consider when you remember your adolescence. So in this point, the cricket, his conscience, does two things. It warns him how horrible this is going to be and how utterly dangerous it is. And then at the same time, it helps him prepare and goes along with him. And so it's quite comical. So watch what happens here. Okay, so I've cut this a little bit, but what happens in the movie is that he goes to the bottom of the ocean and he starts to ask about Monstro. And as soon as he asks any of the fish down there, the denizens of the sub-oceanic world, where Monstro is, they just run away. And so Monstro is he who cannot be named, right? And I'm sure you've encountered that in your reading before, right? That's the hallmark of in the Harry Potter series. Right, see, now you've done it. Yeah. So this represents something so terrible that it can't even be talked about. Okay, so what happens is Pinocchio ends up not only at the bottom of the ocean, but he has to go to the deepest part of the bottom of the ocean where the most terrible thing rests. And so we're cutting to the point where he does that. So now you might ask, how did Geppetto get in the whale? And the answer to that is it's never really made that clear in the movie. But I can tell you some things about that, is that if you conceptualize your historical tradition as a personality, like a body of laws and customs, say, it's not alive. It's dead, right? Because it's composed of the past. And because it's dead, it can't come up with anything new. So if it encounters something new, it's stopped. And that's what's happened to Geppetto, is that he's engulfed by this entity that represents the absolute unknown, and he cannot figure out how to get out. And the reason for that is none of the things he knows, so none of the things that history has produced as a body of knowledge, are sufficient to deal with the fundamental problem. That doesn't mean they're useless. It just means that just like the puppet is lost without the father is also lost without the puppet. And that's the relationship between you and history, your history. When you study history, you think, well, you're studying a record of events in the past, and that's not right. What you're studying is the circumstances that gave rise to you as a being. And unless you understand your history in every way you possibly can, then you're an incomplete creature. You don't know enough to move forward. In the same way, your culture, being composed of dead fathers, so to speak, can't progress without you because you're its eyes. And there's an Egyptian story that features the god Horus, who I've talked to you about before, who actually resurrects his father from the dead by giving him an eye. So Geppetto can't figure out how to get out of this whale without help. All right, now something very sophisticated happens here. So, and I have to explain it to you at multiple levels at the same time. So now Geppetto is hungry. And when the whale opens its mouth, a lot of fish come in. Now, one of the things I want you to think about, you can just put this in the back of your mind, is that one of the oldest symbolic representations of Christ is a fish. and all of his followers were fishermen. And so there's this weird relationship between the messianic figure who's at the base of it, at least at the base of Christian culture, and the idea of things that are pulled up from the depths. Now here's what happens in this part of the movie. It's so amazing. So Geppetto is looking for fish, and the reason for that is he doesn't think he can get out of the whale, and so he might as well have some fish while he's in there. And so he's given up on getting out. Now what happens is that the whale swallows Pinocchio as if he's a fish. So Pinocchio is put into the same category as fish, and it happens to Geppetto a couple of times. He mistakes Pinocchio for a fish. You'll see. So what that means in some sense is that Geppetto can't distinguish between the fish that will feed you for the day and whatever it is that Pinocchio represents. And so you could think about Pinocchio as a fisherman instead of as a fish. And so you can think about it this way, and here's an old saying. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for one day, but if you teach him to fish, you feed him forever. And so the idea is it's better to develop the skill to acquire something than it is to have the thing. Now, what Pinocchio represents is, he's like a meta fish. I know this is a strange way of thinking about it. Geppetto's problem isn't that he's hungry. His problem is that he can't get out of the whale. And so what he's fishing for isn't something to eat. It's something that will help him get out of the whale. But he can't recognize the difference between the proximate solution, which is so that he'll just no longer be hungry, so he's got a very short-term outlook, and a solution to the much broader problem. So what happens is, the whale swallows a bunch of fish, and Pinocchio's in there, and Geppetto's fishing away, and he catches Pinocchio. And Pinocchio announces himself, and Geppetto tells him to be quiet because he's interfering with him fishing. And then when he turns to hug Pinocchio, because he wakes up, he actually hugs a fish, and then he discards the fish. So then he figures out that Pinocchio's there. Then Geppetto decides that, well, they're going to have to live inside the whale. And it's another idea of his blindness at this point, because he's composed of the dead past, so to speak. So what Pinocchio does is start to destroy the ship itself, which is what they're floating in the whale, to start a fire. And the fire makes the whale mad enough to spit them out. And the whale then transforms itself into a dragon and tries to kill them, because it's a fire-breathing entity at that point. And so part of the understory is, it's better to figure out how to fish than to fish, or that more profoundly, it's better to figure out how to do something than to merely benefit from the thing itself. Pinocchio represents that which can do new things. So he's a hero, and he's willing to destroy part of the current order, that's the ship, in order to produce a new strategy that will actually free them from the whale. Now he wants to get his father out of there too. So that's what happens in the next 5 minutes, I would say. Okay, so now there's a shock here, because essentially, in some sense, the entity that's going to provide the solution to this very complex problem has arrived on the scene. But it's quite damaged. First of all, it's been speaking improperly, right? So that's an adolescent representation. So it brays a lot of nonsense. And it's been corrupted in a variety of ways. And so, you know, to some degree, what that means is that as you mature and you're moving away from your mere marionette status, your interaction with society, like Rousseau said, corrupts you in all sorts of ways. I mean, you're participating in that corruption, but it still happens. But in the representation in the movie, the truth of the matter is it doesn't matter if you've been corrupted to some degree, as long as you haven't absolutely sacrificed your capacity for true speech and vision. So, you know, that's a pretty hopeful message, because Pinocchio is by no means a perfect entity, but he might be good enough. See, that's also an indication there of why people are often unwilling to form a representation with, so to speak, form a relationship with the archetype of the Great Father, because to some degree, the archetype is a figure of perfection, and the individual in relationship to that archetype is always pathologically flawed. And so the embarrassment of that realization, which is exactly what's happening to Pinocchio right now, is often enough to stop people from doing it. So what that would say, what that means in some sense, is that in order for you to mature in the fullest possible manner, you have to understand the manner in which you're deeply flawed in relationship to your potential as it might be historically determined. And that's a very bitter thing to do. You know, it's much easier, and people do this all the time, to engage in half-witted, formulaic, ideological criticisms of the system as a whole. It's like, you know, the probability that the system is more flawed than you is pretty damn low. So you might want to start with, you know, getting rid of your donkey ears in your tail and stop braying nonsense before you judge the entire, you know, historical process by which human beings have come into being. So anyways, that's kind of what that means. Okay, so this is very interesting too, because so Pinocchio ends up being a master of fire. Well, you can think about that as, there is a book written a while back by a primatologist who also wrote Demonic Males, Richard Wrangham. And he talked about the origin of fire. And as far as Wrangham is concerned, we invented fire about 2 million years ago. And that enabled us to cook food. And that enabled us to swap intestinal length for brain. So if you look at a chimpanzee, you know, chimpanzees are like the ultimate in couch potatoes, right? They're about this high and they're shaped like this. They have this huge barrel body. And the reason they have that is because they eat leaves. And so they have to spend like 8 hours a day eating leaves. They will eat meat if they can get it. They have to spend like 8 hours a day eating leaves and just chewing them over and over, because like leaves, A, they don't want to be eaten, so they're pretty tough and inedible, and B, they don't have any nutritive quality to speak of. So the chimpanzee has to spend all of its time chewing, which is a rather mindless endeavor, all things considered. Whereas human beings 2 million years ago or thereabouts invented fire, and as a consequence of that, we could cook meat, and meat is incredibly energy rich. And it's easy to digest once it's cooked. And so the consequence of the invention of fire was that we're the way we are today. We could have a brain instead of a gut. And so the idea that Pinocchio's mastery of fire, and it's as something more than merely a means of cooking. That's how it started out, right? But you can think of our entire technological capacity as stemming from the mastery of fire. Now, the other thing you can think of, and this is very much worth considering, is that Pinocchio masters fire, and that turns the whale into a dragon. And so the idea there too is that, and this is an old idea, is that our technological prowess is something that makes nature itself angry. And of course you might say, well, do you believe this? And the answer to that is, well, how many of you have environmentalist leanings? And that's exactly the story that you're following, because you're still wondering about whether or not mastery of fire was in somehow against the natural order, and then it will end up in all of our deaths. And you know, that's a reasonable thing to worry about, but not mastering it was going to end up pretty badly too. So what happens is that in the midst of this complete chaos, Pinocchio has a choice, and the choice is he can either save himself, which is a very, very selfish choice, and reduces him to an ahistorical individual because he has no relationship left with his father, or he can put himself at great risk and rescue his father, you know, finish the process, stop his father from drowning, and complete the... Okay, so Pinocchio dies, and then his father brings him home. And so because he's rescued his father, the benevolent spirit of nature appears, resurrects him, and turns him into a real human being. So it's pretty funny, as far as I'm concerned, that the answer to Nietzsche's great question manifested itself in mid-1930s in the form of an animated child's movie. So, you know, and that's an example. That's an example of a number of things. It's an example of how archetypes work. It's also an example of how artists are on the edge of discovery all the time, and they discover things they don't even understand. So, we'll see you next Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay.
Boy,
So,
playing that one. Tuesday.
what do you think? That was a bunch there. It's been a while since I've seen Pinocchio.
Yeah, long time ago.
We took some notes, and we've been watching all your comments too. We appreciate your comments.
Yeah. So many of the things that Peterson was talking about parallel to the things we've experienced. We were involved in a chaotic situation. Seems like we were turned into brain donkeys Can you imagine a donkey going hee haw all day? It's like a witness preaching all day. What's the difference? There is no difference between the two. And then, of course, at some point we woke up to that. In the process, Pinocchio was moving away from that marionette that he was to what?
A human, a real person.
A real person going through that chaos. What did you notice?
Well, he mentioned Jiminy Cricket, JC, Jesus Christ, and at one point he said that there's like he's a bug, right? Or Jiminy Cricket, a cricket is a bug. So there's things that bug me, and when we're in the organization, we had some cognitive dissonance. There were things that bothered us, but we didn't really know or didn't admit it or didn't know what to do with it.
Our conscience.
Our conscience.
That it speaks to us.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, are we living truthfully?
Yeah. In other words, strings. We're allowing someone to pull our strings. Someone said that the governing body is the problem. I said, well, they're really not the problem to everyone. There's some people don't even know the governing body. They don't even know what a governing body is. They don't know them. But those that following the governing body have problems. So following the governing body seems to be the problem. And they're the one, in fact, the governing body are the ones that said that they should be followed and obeyed, even if what they say doesn't make sense. How about that? Could that be a problem? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it's kind of like the marionette going back home, wanting them to pull, wanting his strings to be pulled. Some people like their strings pulled.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's easier. They can make decisions for me. I don't have to make decisions.
Have to think.
I don't have to think. Much easier, more comfortable, safer. Yeah, there's no growth there. We remain what it says, a marionette.
Mm-hmm.
What concerns me is that people, we and others, were drawn to that organization because they offered the truth. And we've come to understand and realize that they don't offer truth. In fact, they lie. They exchanged what was true for the lie. And we accepted it. We said, yeah, well, sure, that's the greatest thing going. We'll take it. We'll accept it. And through that, we've come to feel the consequences of those lies. And we allowed them to pull our strings. And at the same time realizing, wait a minute now, I don't think that's true. That's not my truth anymore. That's not true to me. And it boils down to the fact that there may be no truth except your truth. In other words, our own personal truth. Because someone else's truth could be very true to them and it's very real. It works. They operate by that. But it's not mine. It's not yours. But it's theirs. And that could be the very thing that we need to pursue is our personal truth. And violating that is shown up in a watchtower when a person starts to question the truth and starts discovering their truth, but yet they're not living their truth. They're living what they call the truth, which really is a lie. So basically, they're living a lie. And it's very disturbing. It was very disturbing for me when I came to that point and realized that I'm living a lie. It's not true. I realize it now. I didn't at the time. How can I continue doing this and be truthful? I can't. I'm living. I would, if I continued to play that game, the truth, I would be living a lie.
Mhm.
How can I do that? And some are comfortable doing that. Some are very comfortable in that organization, in that arrangement of being controlled by that arrangement. They're comfortable with it. Some are not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with it. For
I'm not
example, anybody
either.
here are not
No.
comfortable. Maybe there's some who are listening now who are still in the organization, and maybe you're still comfortable with it, or maybe you're questioning it. Understandably, understandably. Your questions are going to lead to your truth. Your truth, not the truth. There is no the truth. It's a myth.
Yeah.
It's a myth.
Yeah.
That's a snare.
Yeah.
That's the bait. The truth.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what Jay says.
Yeah.
Jay says that's the problem.
But your truth is accessible.
Mhm.
And you don't even know what it is until you discover it. But you'll never discover it if someone else is basically pulling your strings. And this is where the next video we're going to see touches on the reason why some people find it acceptable for their strings to be pulled, and others, no, totally unacceptable. Not my string. You're not going to pull my strings. Who are you? What are you? What's your truth? And what's happening now, and what's been happening, is this classification of people who need to live their truth as opposed to people who will live according to someone else's truth out of security, which they perceive as security. And if you think about it, we've done that for as long as our existence. The governments have done that to us and for us. The governments provided truth for us, governmental truth, laws. Do we really have to do this? Yeah, it's the law. It's true. You have to. It's true. Oh, okay. Is so-and-so this? Yep, it's true. Is the president an upright and decent man? Yes, he is. Why? Well, he's the president. Is that true? Yes. Is it really true? Probably not. But see, that's presented as the truth, and so people accept it, have to accept it. Now, it's come about lately where people have realized, you know what? The government's corrupt. They lie. Oh, but I was raised with it. I was raised with it. I thought all government officials, all doctors, all lawyers, all clergy, all people of note, they're all good people, trusted, trustworthy. Isn't it true? Well, check for yourself. I found it's not true. So many hide their criminality behind those titles. They just do. So what's the truth? Well, that's not the truth. They're not true. It's like, so for me to live my truth would mean I'd have to adjust my behavior to reflect what I found. And that means, oh man, the Democrats say this, the Republicans say that, the progressives this, the this, that, the this, that. What are they really all doing? So where do I stand on the matter? Well, that's that. Where I stand on the matter is my truth. Where they stand on the matter is their truth. But see, what they want to do, the government, the politicians, religions, what they want to do is get you. They want to get me on their side, on their truth. They're just looking for someone to fill their need for slaves. They need slaves. Some people have become very comfortable being slaves. Others say, no, I'm not comfortable being a slave. That's exactly what's been taking place. The separation. In fact, if you want to think of it biblically, you might even want to think in terms of the separation between sheep and goats.
Mm.
Oh, so are you a sheep? Or are you a goat? I know there's one great content provider called Goat-like Personality, as opposed to being a sheep. Well, you know, sheep get led to slaughter. And are they made in God's image? Humans are made in God's image. Are humans sheep? Is God a sheep? Are made in his image? I mean, no, I don't believe God's a sheep. So I've come to realize that, no, of course I'm not a sheep, and I'm not going to behave like a sheep. And what's this about goats? Oh, well, they have a different personality. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we judge for ourselves, you know, which would you rather? But what's taking place, there has been a separation of people in terms of sheep-like personality traits, goat-like personality traits. See, the sheep-like ones can be enslaved. They'll go wherever they're supposed to go. They wait for someone to find the food for them. They need protection. Oh, they look for that loving care. They're just kind of useless, basically. They're very needy. In fact, the only way they're useful is if you fleece them and then eat them. That's a sheep. That's it. Whereas goats, well, they're a different critter. They're a different critter. They know how to eat. They usually don't take any problems from people, and they're different. They're different. Yeah. At any rate, separation taking place, and that might be something that you've noticed lately as well. We've noticed it in the Watchtower as a separation, just as other religions. And if anybody wants to come in and discuss this too, we can. But there's another video.
It's just a 10-minute video.
10-minute video that's going to run through this a little better than I did. So maybe we can watch that first. We can see that video next, right? From Inspired.
So this is it, my friends. We're going to talk about the Great Split. And this is a subject that has different names. People have different images of what it looks like. But the fundamental premise, I believe, is very much the same. So let's go through the fundamental premise here together and see if we can unpack this and come out of it a little clearer on what is truly happening in the world right now. So what I consider to be the Great Split is an event or a period of time that establishes a great divide between two sections of the population. In the beginning stages, it may appear like a normal periodical societal phenomenon, which usually consists of tensions, release of tensions, and reconciliation. Okay, so the Great Split, however, is a very different phenomenon which already does and will continue to create two entirely different worlds. So let's unpack this a little bit. In society, you have, and history shows this, you always have sort of a tension point where fundamentally, I mean, there's more viewpoints, but fundamentally one group that wants things to move in this direction and the other group says, no, it should stay the same. Tensions are building. That causes sort of societal moments. And then there is usually a release event or a period of release events that allow for the tensions to be released. And then they go into a reconciliation period and they go, okay, let's do it this way from here on forward. Let's change a few things, and boom. These are, in my perception, sort of normal, even though they're often instigated societal developments. That's not what I'm talking about here. It's entirely different. We're talking about something that people call the ascension, or others call split of the timelines, or breaking free of the matrix. We'll get to that. So this is what we're talking about here, really. And there are differences that you and everybody else can sort of find and feel in perception and language. I think this has become so clear in the last few months and years. The situational perception and language used to describe events and circumstances is completely different. Think awake versus woke. If you think what these terms might mean, they've only been around really. Awake in terms of spiritual awakening, awakening to a greater reality, awakening to a broader perception, awakening to a truer sense of what this reality is, versus woke, which is a very, it's a labeled and defined. So you are aware of racial problems, racist problems. You're aware of gender ideology, expressions. It's a very, very different world. And those two terms mean very different things. This eventually creates two distinct streams that move farther and farther away from each other. We're dealing with 3D perception versus omnidimensional perception. And I want to quickly explain that. So I don't believe that you and I and our wonderful viewers watching are all omnidimensional, so that we have perception of all dimensions and that we know about all of reality. Not at all. But we're seeking to do that. We're seeking to explore, expand, and as a matter of fact, I mean, I might as well tell you, this is our new limited edition T-shirt that Christine designed, because we're all truth seekers. So she made this for you all. Love that. I can't wait to see you all wearing it out there and sending us photos, and maybe we'll meet each other. But this is basically what describes us, and I'll let you know where you can get it a little later. But this is what describes us. It's this internal intuition, inspiration, and drive to seek further and learn and know more and expand beyond our current limitations. The 3D group is very different. We're going to talk about this. Very, very different.
Are you relying on indicators that promise you the moon but leave your portfolio in the dark?
So you have this, there's a shift in abilities too. The omnidimensional group, that's what I call them, begins to develop more and more abilities and strategies to deal with a multitude of situations in a self-reliant way, while the 3D group relies almost entirely on outside assistance like the government. Big differences are also the ability to heal better and remain in balance in the face of adversity. So we have seen this. The split in perception and language and abilities became visible since the beginning of this decade, 2020 onward. Language shifted farther and farther apart. There were streams before, but much more now. Perception, abilities. People are losing, the 3D group, the majority is losing abilities to deal with things. They're not gaining, they're losing them, and they're expecting more and more of the outside forces of the government to provide solutions, science, medicine. That's what they're wanting to do. The other group, we're seeking for greater and greater inner abilities, and we're looking to become self-reliant in all situations. The split has begun. It's not like this is coming, this has begun. The question is, what stage are we in and how is it going to play out? Because I think this is what a lot of people sort of want to know. And let's see if we can find some answers to that. So you have the outlook. How do we look into the future? The 3D group is looking for external solutions for all problems and expects to be taken care of in the future. They're fully invested and already reliant on the idea of a technocratic society, and will sacrifice freedom, free will, free expression, freedom of movement, and much more to feel secure. They've shown this. 2020, again, I keep talking about it because it was a split event. It created two distinct paths forward that you couldn't change any longer. The omnidimensional group is looking for sovereignty and absolute self-determination. So if you think back when April, May, June of 2020 rolled around, one group was so hypnotized, they were so programmed into the storyline, they were willing to give up anything and everything just to feel safe and secure again, just to feel normal again, right? They would, no matter what, you could have told them to, practice a headstand every day for an hour, and you would feel healthier, and they would do it. And then was this other group who absolutely just went into, hey, listen, I'm doing me. It's all good. You do you, but I'm free. But I was born free. I'm not playing along. I'm not playing the game. I won't push myself on you, but just leave me be. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what not to do. And so this created a completely different outlook into the future. One group that, for the freedom group, if you will, for them, for us, that was the most important thing. For those whom reputation mattered before, they didn't care. If others thought they were tinfoil heads, they were crazy, didn't matter. If others thought they were crazy, didn't matter. What mattered was truth and freedom. The 3D group was so panicked, so fearful. All that mattered was external security. How can we get that? This created such a shift and split in perception and timelines that you can't go back to that. So then we go, what is the outcome, right? Just in a nutshell, eventually the great split will likely lead to completely different realities that the two groups inhabit. Some call this the ascension process, some the breaking free from the matrix, some call this something else. No one knows for sure how it's going to play out. We all just have the distinct feeling that it is going to play out.
Diabetes,
coronary disease,
autoimmune diseases,
obesity, cancer,
pretty much all chronic diseases.
Now, the difference, again, before, two groups rivaled, fought, reconciled, shifted, moved forward. We expect the difference in frequencies between the 3D group, and the omnidimensional group to be so big that eventually they won't be able to inhabit the same reality. Able, not wanting to, able. There are frequencies that don't match up with each other no matter how hard you try. They just never will meet. And we are drifting apart and apart and apart. So what will this be? In my perception, I believe what we're doing here is raising the frequency so that this matrix will eventually dissolve and we will return to prime reality, or we will break free from it and return to prime reality. However, this group that I'm talking about, this 3D group, that is, I would say, the majority of the population is not willing to do that. Not willing to do the inner work, not willing to let go. They're clinging on to the reality that they have known. And I'm not even judging them that they have any bad intentions. It's just all they've ever known, all they've been programmed into. And losing that means losing their identity. It means losing their reality. It is basically insanity that kicks in. This is going to happen to a certain section. Certain section will go through a brutal, abrupt awakening, and sooner rather than later. I mean, we're talking months, I think.
We're back on.
Hi. Does anyone hear anything that resonated with you?
There's a link in the chat. You
Yeah.
can come on
Come
with
on
us if you'd like to. We're enjoying reading the comments, and that is someone that we listen to quite frequently. His channel is called Inspired, and he usually puts out a video every day.
Every day.
Every
just
day,
about,
yeah.
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 Did anyone pick up on anything? that he said that you recognize you might be going through, or the people around you are going through. Any parallels in what you've experienced and what we're experiencing right now? Did you notice that the omnidirectional, or a little more free thinking, searching and seeking for new paths, new directions, new solutions, whereas the 3D were the ones holding to the old, unwilling, unable, maybe unable to venture out into new. Can they live together? How did they live together before, if you think about it? Or were these people, or did they not ascend to that yet? Because he's talking about these, they ascended, as if, well, people were not those omnidirectional creatures previously. They became that maybe they grew to that with advanced knowledge.
Well, he purposely used the example without coming out what happened in 2020 and how there were the two groups.
Yeah.
And we saw that. We saw that in our own family,
Sure did.
where they were very, very afraid. They were afraid to go out. They were afraid to be around people.
Yeah.
They stayed indoors for a whole year.
Yeah.
And and then there were those that, like us, we just went out, no
We made it
fear.
a point. We made it a point to go out every day.
Yeah, and we were
weren't-
fine.
No, yeah. It's like there's no way we're going to fit into that.
Yeah. And basically, they changed things. I mean,
Oh yeah.
they changed how people reacted, and you know, a 6-foot rule, everything in the stores.
Of course, that was with that pandemic. What about with religions? How about with the Watchtower? What did they do? How did they take people and change them from natural people to a programmed people? Now, the natural person who has likes, dislikes. Oh, you like this? Oh, I like that. Oh, you wear those clothes? Oh, I wear these clothes. Oh, okay, that's fine. Not my kind of clothes, but that's you. That's cool. No big deal. As long as I can do what I like to do, you do what you like to do. That works. But then something comes along and guides and directs them into a focus. And they mentioned that. Sean mentioned that, or John mentioned that toward the end. How some would rely on a technocratic arrangement or a theocratic arrangement. Either way you go, it's a very authoritative arrangement. And it was all designed to track people in and get them to comply. Question becomes, why? What's the point? Unless you come and start to realize, well, that's what governments do. That's what the military does. The military does that. Well, what does the military do that for? Well, they need soldiers. They need people that are going to obey orders. They've given up their own personal desires and they've taken on the military goal to be basically a soldier. You could, if a person were to do it as a civilian, someone doing that, you would call them a slave. So, should we be free sovereign creatures, or should we be slaves? And you're going to get some people who are going to make the case for being a happy slave. Well-fed, protected, cared for, don't have to think about anything. they'll tell me what to do. I'll just do it, and they're going to protect me. And I know I'm going to get what I need, and I'm happy because it scares them to death. Scares them to death to think that they have to wonder, oh my goodness, where's my next meal going to come from? Or, oh, you mean I'm going to have to work out a problem here? Because I don't understand what's going on. I don't know what to do. How will I ever solve this problem? And there's people that just simply couldn't fit into the situation where they would have to think. It's interesting. Jordan mentioned about how they traded their brains for their intestines. In other words, they became just eaters to thinkers.
That was with
Hello,
the,
Pete.
hi Pete,
Hey, good.
that was with the fire. Once they
Yes.
discovered fire,
Yeah.
they could, cook the food. It would take less time,
Right.
and they didn't have to chew so much.
Right. And they got
That was an
higher,
interesting point.
and they got a more dense nutrition as a result of that, and they were able to advance.
Any thoughts, Pete?
Pinocchio. So yeah, the frequency thing. That's kind of that's where I'm at right now. I find that I'm just rated a high frequency, and low frequency. I can't even tolerate it really, and it's funny because low frequency is really not. You can't tolerate high, but it gets destroyed in your high frequency. But I find there is like a separating people, and I wonder,
Well, the whole Watchtower experience was all about separating people, about cultivating people. In other words, leave their high frequency and operate according to a low frequency.
Fear. Yeah, fear would be low, so it's always for Watchtower.
Oh yeah. Oh
Be
my
afraid,
goodness.
be afraid. Even in the world, everywhere in the world. It's like,
Yeah.
well,
See,
I envision my future, and I'm laying the foundation now for my new future. I don't, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I'm not even paying attention. People are saying to me, "Oh, did you hear about this? You hear about that?" No.
yeah,
I was in the woods. I'm been cutting trees.
I know. I see.
I'm going to build a house. I plan on having my heat pump in before like the winter, so I'm going to build the whole thing. And I'm cutting the trees down right now. I already cut all lumber, so I'm going to mill it up. I already got like a stack of like my brother's rented the lumber thing for me, so.
That's fabulous.
So I'm going to build it all. I'm going to do it all. I don't need part, because that was part of the thing. You're getting more. The lower frequency, they get more and more kind of dependent on the system.
Yeah.
I haven't worked for 2 years now, and I'm not dependent on anybody. I sold some of my junk.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I sold like most of my silver, but where it's going up now. But even that, I don't give a crap. I got lots of junk.
See, so you're pulling your own strings.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I'm creating my own future. I see my future. See, so now I don't need a big house, but I'd like to travel. I'd like to be able to get around. I like to have a little bit of money. I never really cared about that before. But.
Yeah, same here, Pete. Same here. Humble Bum said a low frequency is irritated by high frequency.
So true.
They cannot rise to a high frequency, but they can drag you down to theirs.
Yeah, and see, and this is where, in all fairness, we're different. People are different, and there's no value judgment here. It's not a value judgment. It's just recognition of different operating. It's like a different operating system. Are we better? Am I better? No, I'm not better. I'm different. They're different. We're all different. Well, why can't we live differently? Well, see, the emperors come along and say, oh, no, 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 no. You all have to live the same. Makes it easier for me to corral you all together and use you to get more land, to get riches, to make this a powerful nation. And see, so can sovereign, and you think about this, can sovereign people um, work for a sovereign state? Because a sovereign state has to be strong, and that means all the people have to work for it. It's like, it sounds like there's a problem there.
Well, I see. I did a lot of different work. And it was when I probably built 5 or 6 houses if you count everything I did. I put in heating systems in hundreds of houses. I did janitor work for years. I did so many things that it was when I did farming that I realized, hey, I just grew enough food in this year that I could eat. If I just spread it out, I could have lived me and my whole family for 100 years. And I just realized, then I thought about it. Hey, wait, and I built 5 houses, and somebody's not pulling their weight around here. That was my first thought. So and that's what I thought. It's somebody's not. And then I realized after when I started working for these billionaires, I realized no, that's not it. That's part of the problem. But the bigger problem is these guys that need 3 jets and 4 ships and a dozen houses. Those guys are the damn problem. So they need to be just told, listen. And that's exactly what I did. I said, it was the last job we did. The guy had 6 bathrooms, and it was fine. I walked by the toilet, and it's like the toilet lifts up, and I'm like, and I realized that's one of those fancy toilets that wipe your arse. So I'm looking at it. It's brand new. So I'm like, so I get my phone, and I'm saying, how much are one of these damn things worth? I'm like, this thing's like 10 grand.
Oh my
I'm
God.
like, the guy's got 6 bathrooms. I'm like, I'm done. These a-holes can do their own damn shit.
Well, but the reality is there are going to be those people that seek to work for them because they cannot do it themselves.
They're not creative. They have no brain, and they went through the school system. It's just what the school puts out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and it's so important. I'm not going to sit here and say everybody should be free agents, creative, sovereign. I don't think they can be. I really don't think they can be. And that's why there needs to be an interaction between people.
That's what I'm like, man. So people are just so silly, man. You got to lie to people just because they're so silly, and it's the only way to get them not to be silly. Like, my word. You guys are talking about. I think Brian was about the masks, and that's almost the stage where I'm at now, where I got to put on 40 different masks and just depend on who I'm with. You're a Jesus crew? Well, guess what? I'll be into Jesus. I'll put on my Jesus mask. I don't care. Just like, because me and my boy were talking about that after too, because he talks about, he's online a lot. So he does these personas, because we were talking about like hats and stuff. People put on a hat. And that's what he said. Yeah, I do that I do like my Russian guy. So I get like my cat. So he does these different personas, and he puts like a little, so I'm like, hey, that's almost where I'm at, where I gotta just.
Yeah, we can do that.
It's the truth, man. The truth, people just can't handle the truth. But people are kind of realizing, hey, like that guy there, he talked about the same thing. This seems to be just like whatever's going on here. It's not.
Well, look, it's been happening for a long time, but it was not centralized. The internet made it centralized. The internet enabled it to be focused earthwide from one point, all because of communication ability. And that's why it could never happen before. It happened locally in local communities, but now it's centralized. That the computer, the internet, it just allows a family or several families, call them the Illuminati, call them the elite, whatever you want, but they're able to get what they want. And they know that there are people that will they'll slave for them. They will slave for them. There are friends right now that will continue to slave for Watchtower. Why? Well, because they're comfortable slaving for Watchtower. They're comfortable. I'm not. You're not. Others aren't.
Well, once in some like I do different investigations, and I do tarot now. But anyways, look at this tarot girl. She's talking a lot of weird stuff, and I'm like, I almost get the feeling like she has gifts, but at some point, I feel like you know she was raised poor, so it's one of these groups approached her because there's different groups, right? So one of these groups approached her with some money. Now she's using her power for like that. That's just that's what you know, that's my impression of what's going. So some people they might have different reasons for just flipping over, and I think it's going both ways. Some are going from that side, but there almost is like a dividing
There is a
and
dividing.
some kind of
See,
show.
my concern is for those that are still in Watchtower and they don't want to be in Watchtower. They're the PMOs. They don't want to be, but they're staying in. They have their reasons for staying in, and I'm not judging their reasons for staying in. But the reality is, the question has to be asked: what is a PMO going to be left with when things change? When they're at the point where they can't do anything. In other words, when they get old and they're on their deathbed, what are they going to be able to look back and say, I lived my truth. I lived my truth.
Mhm.
Or, no, I lived the truth. And they had their reasons, I think, to retain their family, or maybe because they liked the involvement. In other words, they were able to put on that persona, and it wasn't important to them. Maybe it's not important to some people to live their truth. Maybe it's not. But you're going to have to think very carefully and make sure, because you're not going to have a chance to do it over. There's no do-overs.
Maybe there might be.
Well, not now.
Wait, we might move through this a bunch of times. You never know.
That's true. That's true, but maybe each time is critical.
Yeah, I don't know. See, that goes back to the Pinocchio thing. Maybe, and I thought about this before. Maybe we're just kind of here as kind of non-creations, and it's kind of up to us to, hey, you want to become a real, or do you want to just gravitate to this lower kind of?
Right.
If you want to do that, you'll just keep either resetting and reset until you either get it or
Right.
eventually delete it out. So maybe this is just our proving grounds to go out of here.
Yep.
A lot of people don't really get that.
Yep.
And they just like,
I think what is
maybe
happening,
there's something here to help others and try to say, hey, man.
I think people are doing what they need to do. I think those that are staying in are staying in because they need to stay in. They need to.
Yeah.
And there are those that are leaving because they need to leave. They need to leave. And so there's,
Stay.
what's that?
I was a week. I couldn't stay. I just once I realized it was garbage, I was like, I was done. That was my last meeting. My goodness.
I understand. Same here.
It
So
was.
that's the concern. That's the concern that, no one is late. It's because it's no fun to realize, oh my goodness, I should have done it sooner.
Yeah. Everyone says that.
I know.
We should have
So
gotten
true.
out sooner.
Yeah.
But I just can't lie. Like I just couldn't be dishonest. Like I would have just shot my mouth off too much and just said they would have.
Yeah. See, and where others don't have that problem, right? See, it's a problem for some.
Right.
Not to be able to lie. It's like, oh my God, I've got to be able to be creative and lie. They're comfortable doing that. So interesting, the differences. We're so interested. So in other words, as we seek our own truth, we also have to seek basically our own people. Because you may have to, because a person who's honest is not going to work very well around someone who's a liar, dishonest. It won't work. It just doesn't work. And they may have to disconnect from that toxicity. Where some families are trying to stay together even when there's something toxic going on, and it's not good. This is the time of reaction. It's the time of reaction. And we have that opportunity. You know, this is unrelated, Pete, but I follow a young guy in Saskatchewan, and he's been building a log house.
Mhm.
It's
Young
called,
guy?
yeah, oh yeah, inlines and trap lines. That's the name. You check it. You check it out. Seriously, you'll appreciate it.
He's a hard worker.
Oh
and
my God,
he works by himself.
this guy's he's a legend. He's a legend. He's a legend. He's a young guy. He's a young guy.
What'd you call it?
Inlines and trap lines. The inlines refers to the six-cylinder Dodge diesels. He likes 6-cylinder Dodge diesels. And trap lines, he's a trapper as well. He traps wolves. But he stopped doing that, and now he's been building a log cabin, a log home, a home. This thing's
Yeah,
monstrous.
it's pretty nice.
He built alone.
I thought about that because one of my friends he used to soda blast them and redo them, and often he had to like replace like a log that had rotted out or something.
Yeah.
But when I said I was building something, that's what he said. Well, what do your logs look like? So he just told me how to build like a log book, and I might build the log thing, but I'll just build that out there.
Nice. Well, check Kyle is his name.
Yeah, no, I just found the
Okay.
trap
So,
lines and lines. He's got like 83,000 subscribers.
Great guy.
So Pete, you said you like to travel. Do you have a
No, I never traveled. I want to
Oh.
travel now.
Oh, you want to? Okay, well,
I'm going to just do more stuff that was just I never did. Like
yeah,
I'm
it's really nice. We enjoy traveling. We didn't when we were younger. I mean, not much.
We're raising family.
We were raising our family and being a witness,
Yeah.
so we didn't have time
We're
for that.
braying like donkeys.
Yeah.
I like that. Can you imagine a donkey hee-hawing all day? Hee-haw, hee-haw. Well, that's what witnesses do with their preaching. Oh, yeah.
It's funny because a friend, I was talking to a friend here a while ago, and he was a witness too, but he's got like a new Jesus thing, right? So he was like talking to me for like a while about this, and I was thinking, man, this is how I sound to people because I'm trying to just say, shh, I don't care about the Jesus stuff, no offense. But that was the thing I thought, man, this is how I sound. I sounded like this to people how many times? Because I got to like, because I try to drop hints like, man, I don't.
Yeah.
Because he was doing the faith healer stuff. I'm like, well, placebo, it's kind of like the same thing, isn't it? Ain't got nothing to do with Jesus, so maybe it's just a brain thing, not a Jesus thing.
Yeah. This is a wonderful time now because people are going to be able to see through what they couldn't see through before. And it's going to be different. It's different for different people. What I find is what we never learned, and they never taught this in the Watchtower, is respect for other people's opinions.
Mhm.
They never taught that. It was all judgment of other people's opinions. Total difference between respect for other people's opinions. That's a big hurdle. That's a big hurdle.
And I respect other people's opinions, but when their opinions to me are dangerous, then I gotta say,
Well,
well,
it's different.
whoa.
Oh man. Oh yeah. I mean, you can't you can't respect that. No.
So to me, that's that's only when for the the Jesus thing. If it's just hey, you want to talk about the things he said, great. But when you start, it's so judgy, man. It's so judgy. And they're judging you.
Yeah.
Jesus is gonna get you. Jesus is gonna get you. then they wanted that. I think be happy if it happened right then in front of them.
I think eventually that's going to get. See, that idea of judgment came a long time ago in human history. That was kind of like dropped on the human family. This idea of judgment. And honestly, I believe that may evaporate. That may be gone someday, where there's no idea of judgment. So in other words, if we're not worried about being judged by God, whatever that means, then we won't find it acceptable to judge each other. In other words, it's totally, I don't need to be judged by someone. I don't need to judge someone. So we won't, so we don't do it. Um, I think it was a dangerous, manipulative, exploitive thing that was brought into the society, into man. This idea of judging. And I believe many are overcoming that. You can't get along with others if you judge them. You can't get along with them. You can't. Anyone else have anything to add or say or throw tomatoes or something like that?
I'm just on lunch. I was out cutting this morning.
Yeah.
I did see you guys that had the thing last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what trees do you have there? I mean, you have all sorts of hardwoods.
What kind of trees am I cutting? Oh, everything. I'm cutting some cedar
Oh,
and spruce and balsam fir and hardwood right now.
okay.
But pine, there's lots of nice pine there. I'm going to cut some pine too. But pine, you got to be a little more careful because if you cut it too early, the bugs will get into it, or it's kind of moist now. It might turn blue or something.
Where this Kyle is, I think he had a really good for him because the bush there where he lives and talks about the bush. It looks like a relatively new forest where there's all poplar. I think they're poplar trees. And there's so many straight trees of all the same size. So, and
Popple's probably why that some people have to get their logs replaced sometimes. Popple's
really?
Popple's well, it's a good wood, but it's not really. It doesn't take moisture good like a cedar.
Oh,
But
cedar.
to get like great big nice cedar, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Well, you see see if you can identify what Kyle's using. You know, some of his earlier videos show the woodlots that he was working on.
Yeah, well, I can see like around the wood, like around his thing there. Yeah, it looks like a lot of like leafy stuff.
Yeah.
Popple, yeah, or hardwood. I have a bit of popple. It's a good wood. Like it hardens good. It's pretty soft, so you cut it, dry it out good. It does harden pretty good. It's good like furniture wood probably.
Well, it's not. It's a hardwood. It's certainly harder than pine, but it's not as hard as maple. At least the one we have here. Ours has a greenish tinge to it. Does yours?
Yeah, sometimes. I've seen great big ones like that big.
Wow. No, we don't got them.
There was a lot of that out in 100 acres here, like when I first moved here.
Oh, there's a fella on the west coast that we follow too. It's called Buckin' Billy Ray. Look him up. Guy's a gas. He's a cutter. And he's tremendous. Buckin' Billy Ray. You look him up, see what you think.
I get some birds this week, like Friday. My birds come in. I get some more chickens and some pheasants too. I'm gonna try to breed them. See if I can incubate some eggs. I never did that before.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you'll raise chickens for eggs?
Yeah, I got chickens now. A bunch of roosters. Mostly it's roosters, and the roosters are they're bullies. But it's funny because there's one rooster. He I don't know what happened, but he had like these 3 hens. He kind of went in because I had one group of chickens, and then another group of older chickens. But one of the newer group, one of the males, he went in with the females, and he just kind of like was hanging with, and he kind of like taking care of them. He'll fight the other males, and they kind of try to bug him. But he's like one of the smaller roosters too, so it's so funny. But it's
Is it good to have that many roosters?
I don't know. They just like a gang that runs around the property. They eat bugs and stuff, so I don't care.
Oh yeah.
They have a couple of hens that follow them around too, but they're the different hens. They're not.
Right.
It's like different gangs, but they kind of all go in the same coop at night.
Gotcha.
But I'm gonna get some more. I'm gonna try to divide them up a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then they run around. My brother complains because there's like chicken crap like everywhere. Always walking. The dog gets out and chases them around.
Yeah. No chickens here. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting.
Oh, with the eggs,
What's that?
I get like blue and green eggs now. Before it was the brown, white. I don't think I had white eggs for a while.
Wow.
So, and they all taste the same, but it's just like a mental thing. And I
Right.
give them some of the green eggs, and they were like, they wouldn't even eat them because they were green. I'm like, oh no, it's just like the roosters and the hens for those eggs are
Yeah.
they're big, colorful. They're beautiful
Huh.
birds. But it's the color of the egg represents like what the color of the chicken would be more than
They're right.
that's why you got white eggs. It's gonna be like a white chicken. Brown eggs are like brown.
Oh, I
chicken.
never knew that. We
I didn't
haven't.
know that either.
I didn't realize we haven't seen any colored eggs lately. I don't know what they do with them.
But it's all like a mental thing because I like eating the brown eggs better than the white eggs for like a long time. But it's like you crack it open, it's the exact same.
It's
It's
all
just
the same.
totally a mental
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. All the same. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. We speaking of eggs, when we had our shop where we prepared food, we had an egg farmer came and was wanted us to sell his eggs, but we asked him if he feeds them soy, and he didn't know. He didn't know if his feed had soy in it. I said, "Well, we'll sell your eggs if they don't have soy, if you feed them without soy." And so he checked, and he said, "No, he does feed soy." He says, and then he researched what he had to do, what he had to get for soy free.
Hmm.
So that's we get. So he changed over to soy free eggs,
Yeah.
and that's what we get now. A lot of people don't want to eat a lot of soy, especially men.
Mine are just they're eating bugs and grass now for a
Yeah,
little
well,
while.
that's the
Good.
greatest.
That's it.
That's the greatest. Yeah,
We do get some feed. I'm not sure. I know there's corn in it, some grains and stuff.
yeah.
Because when I clean out the coop, I just throw that in the field, and sometimes it just like grows up all the. So I kind of see what's growing in it. I'm not really sure what soy is.
Well,
I think it's more like a bean, I think.
yeah. Well, so you feed them. You've got a chicken feed.
Yeah, well, we just go to the whatever place or.
Well, check it out. See what they put in there, and just to check. But
I never seen any like soy. Kind of looks like it's like a bean thing. I know kind of.
right, but it's all ground up though. I mean,
Yeah.
there's yeah. And see, they never used to use soy for feed before. They just used to use it for oils, but not even to eat. They used it for paint. But then they figured out how to synthesize it so they could render it edible. But they found out it has a few too much hormone, female hormone or something,
Mhm.
and so a lot of people like to stay away from soy.
I feed mine a lot of apples and pumpkins.
Oh, that's great.
That's nice.
That's great.
I grow them and stuff myself and just feed them. Like I'll grow a patch of corn and just pick a half a dozen or a dozen every day and just throw them over the chicken.
I'd buy your eggs if we could.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go on. The Pinocchio thing too, something else that I had heard about that. Somebody was talking about Pinocchio. It has to do with like the pineal gland too. They were breaking down the word. Pinocchio.
Really?
I don't know if that was true.
I missed that one.
I just seen that a while ago.
Yeah. No, there is so much to the Pinocchio story. Well, the theme, of course, between whatever what we're doing here is the fact that most of the things we're told aren't true. It's just not true. They're stories, and there's some valuable things in the stories, and other things aren't valuable. They're not true. And as Jason always said, you have to learn how to chew down the meat and spit out the bones. Uh, otherwise, we end up. Otherwise, you end up loving lies. Uh, it's what it boils down to. Because if you're feeding on untruth, and if you like it, you end up liking lies, and you won't like truth. That's the danger. That's the danger in the whole situation. So you just need to be conscious of what you're taking in. We've got so much information now, and we've got the opportunity to confirm it, or at least to try. See, like John said, we're certainly not ones who are going to know everything, but we want to try to learn about everything. We were designed to learn. I think we were designed to learn. The other day I was thinking about the fact that my beginning and your beginning and your beginning and everyone's beginning was like a blank slate. You were babies. We had to take on new ideas. We had to take on, everything was new. And for the first 3 years of our life, I think that they say that's the most, the fastest, the most impressionable time in taking the most information. Well, what happened that it slowed down? Why did our intake slow down? Should it have slowed down? Or did it only slow down because the society that we live in stopped us at a certain point because they wanted us to focus at a certain point, and they didn't want us to keep advancing past a certain point. And I tend to believe that. I tend to think if, well, like Jesus said, unless you become like little children. Well, heck, little children are learners like crazy. I mean, they just learn, and they just continue to accept and to adapt and to go forward and to advance. Well, why can't we be that way? Why couldn't we be that way indefinitely?
Oh, I don't know. I forgot so much now. I don't want to learn no more. I just want to. I just want to know what I got left.
You're getting lazy.
Just a little bit about the Pinocchio film. It came out in 1940.
40.
It goes way back. So it's lasted all these years, but it was based on a children's novel by Carlo Collodi from 1883.
Wow.
And then Disney made a movie out of it in 1940.
I just found a Pinocchio book. I don't think I brought it in here, but I just found a Pinocchio book.
Yeah.
It's up my tree.
There's a lot. There's
Heck
a
of a
lot
story.
in that story.
Yeah.
I don't remember the story. I didn't even look at the book. I just
Says that the film follows a wooden puppet, Pinocchio, who was created by an old wood carver, Geppetto, and brought to life by a blue fairy. Wishing to become a real boy, Pinocchio must prove himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. Along his journey, Pinocchio encounters several characters representing the temptations and consequences of wrongdoing. As a cricket named Jiminy, who takes the role of Pinocchio's conscience, attempts to guide him in matters of right and wrong. And it reminded me, Joe and I were talking the other day because Joe grew up as a Boy Scout and he still remembers the Boy Scout creed.
Yeah.
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 What is it?
2 different ones. Yeah. The one is, On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and country and to obey the Scout law, to keep myself physically clean, mentally awake, and morally straight. That, I mean, I learned that when I was 11. When I was 11. Oh, and the other thing is the 12. I can't remember what they call them, but 12. A scout is trustworthy, helpful, friendly, courteous, clean, thrifty, kind, brave, clean, and reverent. I think I said.
I was an errant scout because I got a scar here.
What'd you do?
I was at a jamboree, and in the middle of the night, I was sneaking under my tent so I could go raid the food tent until I put my elbow on a big bunch of glass that I had kind of
Holy
buried
Wow.
back in front of my tent of a bottle I broke. And I went back in the tent. I was like, oh shit, man, I got bleeding everywhere. So I got a big story of what I was doing.
Oh, that's,
Oh, that must have hurt.
I didn't want to tell him it was my glass that I broke. I didn't tell him I was going out to raid the food tent. So I don't remember any of that. Maybe I should have been more concentrating on remembering that stuff.
wow.
Sorry, I was
Boy, your conscience got you on that one.
not my conscience, my karma.
Well, whatever you want, but boy. Yes. Yeah. They say experience is something we gain right after we needed it the most. And we're all gaining experience.
Yeah.
That's what I don't worry too much about bad decisions. Even like, come on, we make bad decisions. We probably made some good decisions too, and
Yeah.
you can always reflect even years later and say, hey, well,
Yeah.
and you can always change.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a big emphasis now. You got to raise your frequency, do what you got to do, get the like, and there's so many people trying to bring you down, just disengage and do your own thing and be careful who you let into your circle and
So true.
recognize that you might have to say, hey, see, there's a big thing that I find a lot of people might have difficult with is you're like, what if it is a family member? I guess I don't like, well, I'm with Watchtower on that. I don't agree with their who's good and who's bad, but if somebody is bad, you need to get rid of them.
It's so true.
Or they're going to bring you down. Like,
Yeah. No, that is very true. Well, no one planned on these things happening to our lives, but someone did actually. I mean, we ourselves didn't, but there were other forces, entities, governments that did plan on this happening to us. It was their goal. It was their objective to put people into these situations, to classify them, separate them, and to exploit them and to use them. And they knew that some would like it, some would like the way it being used, and others wouldn't like it. Now we know. So the question becomes, what's the next step? What do we do for the next step? Some people now are continuing to focus in on Watchtower. Others don't even think of it. There are others that don't even concern themselves at all with anything XJW. They just moved on with their life. And others in the middle. Like I said, all depends on what serves that person's interest. One of the points Jordan made was that he said, we don't determine our own interests. In other words, you say, I think I'm going to be interested in creative dance. It's like, no, I'm not going to. Or I think I'm going to be interested in something. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
I think it can, because I have a plan. My plan is I'm doing the foundation, I get rid of my old wife, so I'm going to get a new wife. So what's my interest? I don't really know yet. I'm waiting for my new wife to come in, so I'm open. I don't.
There you go. Were you open?
I think you can be.
Well, wait a minute now. No, I said I think you can be in, you can't determine what your interests are, but you're saying you can be open to new interests.
Well, I'm saying I'm going to determine my interests because it'll be dependent on whatever my new wife's interests are, which I
Okay,
haven't met yet. So I
fair
don't know
enough.
what they're going to be. So I'm open. I'm just worrying about the foundation and
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah,
that cottage.
yeah,
Cottage.
nice.
I wouldn't even.
Yeah, we were talking with Vern earlier about manifestations. You know, we manifest what we want, what we would like to do. We manifest it before it comes. We prepare ourselves for it. You want to find a husband or a wife? Well, you make room in you get a bigger apartment or a house. You make room. You bring that into your life before you even find the person.
You know, I heard this a long time ago. This is interesting. This is when I was a kid. They said in the day when we used to have bench seats. You know what a bench seat is?
Yeah. Like in a
You
park.
know, the car with a full seat that goes
Oh.
across.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Not many cars have bench seats anymore.
You're talking about the front seat.
A front seat,
Yeah.
Yeah.
full. I think it's a bench seat. You're not a bucket; it's a bench. And a lot of guys would drive with their arm out on the top of the seat, and you drive. And they say the person driving like that is anticipating
A wife, a
a
girlfriend,
girlfriend or someone to ride with him.
a partner.
That's manifesting.
There you go.
That's manifesting.
That's the trick. You got to first visualize it in your brain, and you just have to kind of work towards it. Well, what do I got to do to make that happen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, if you want to move to a different location, you know, you got to plan it. You got to see yourself there. You got to,
and start
get all the
preparing.
information
Get
about
the
it.
stuff.
No,
Maybe
when I was
learn a new language, whatever. Yeah.
when I was like 19 or 20, I went to the train station and I said, "How much for a train ticket to Toronto?" It was like 180. I counted mine. I had 100. I had 200. So I said, "All right." And then I went to Toronto and I stayed there for a year. Like
Wow.
I was skinny when I got back, but that was because cockroaches. And I'm like eating. I couldn't eat with cockroaches everywhere. Like,
I guess not. Oh,
but you don't gotta plan it. I used to travel when I first moved to here. I used to travel 100 miles. I didn't even know anybody. This is all French here, so I used to go a big city 100 miles away. I used to just drive there. I didn't know anybody. I just find somewhere to stay.
wow.
I did that. I don't know how many times I did that. Just go somewhere and find somewhere to stay.
They're good adapter.
How to be like that? A lot of people prefer to be like that. It's like if you go to a new town, everybody goes to the McDonald's.
Uh-huh.
It sucks, but they know what they're gonna get. They don't go try
Right.
it. You go
That's
to
right.
the fancy. You go to that little diner. Best food probably around. That's what you got to do.
When we went to Puerto Rico to help rebuild after the Hurricane George, we went down with a bunch of the brothers, and we traveled around in a van of like 12 or 13, and for lunchtime, just invariably, without even question, they would just go to the McDonald's. And I said, "What are you going to here all the time for? You didn't even ask. Don't you even care about eating anywhere else?" And they said, "Well, where else can you eat?" It's like they couldn't conceive of eating anything else. And I was like, "Oh my God."
So what did you find?
Well, one time when we were out, it was before lunch, and I was hungry, and there were what's called pinchos, these little setups, individual
Stands.
vendors
Mhm.
that said chicken barbecued on a skewer and a stick, and it's called pinchos. So we went over and bought a couple of those, my son and I come back, we're eating them, and they look at me like I discovered gold on the moon or something. It's like, where did you get that? I said, they're all over.
And they were inexpensive too.
They're all over. Everywhere you go, you see pin. But they just couldn't conceive of anything other than McDonald's. That was amazing.
Is my sound loud or something?
No, that's good.
My dog's crying there too.
Yeah, I hear him whimper.
Yeah, we
Hear
hear
him
him.
whimpering a little bit.
She just leans against the door.
Does she want to go out?
No.
She wants to come in.
She wants to come in.
Here and cause trouble.
Oh,
She's not loud. She'll do that too if I go out. She'll just like wait by the door.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. You got a dog like that.
She's so sweet. She fell off the bed last night. I don't know what she did. I just heard no. I got her
dear.
bed.
Oh, how is she older? Is she an older dog?
Well, she's almost a year.
Oh.
She got hit by a bus. She got hit by a Jehovah's Witness driving school bus.
Really?
Really?
And he's just like from the next village over. He knows who I am, I'm sure. But he's like the French, right? But he hit it, and the dog was like literally. I thought it was dead. I thought she was dead. She was like bleeding out of that. She had broke her jaw, broke her.
Oh my goodness.
But as soon as I got to like the road, right to the bus, right to the dog, that seriously stopped there, and then he just drove away. Like, all right, no problem. But you think you'd say sorry or hey, how's your dog? Or
Oh, jeez.
Want to wrap it up?
Wow.
brother, thank you, brother.
Well, Pete, keep taking care of your puppy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they want to amputate. They want to amputate the leg.
Oh man.
is it going to be? So it's still healing.
Well, it didn't like the last little part of it, like it didn't. And she keeps chewing it. Like I don't know if it's because I have to change the bandage like every day, but sometimes it's getting better. I'll just like see if I can push it a day or two, and
yeah.
when that happens, she's chewing it. I don't think she has any feeling in the.
Oh my gosh, maybe that's why she's doing that.
The nerves is just it's all like because at first she couldn't even move the whole leg at all. It's just.
Well, still, I mean, even if they do have to amputate it, she'll adapt to it.
How long did it happen? How long ago was it, Pete?
I thought it was like 2 or 3 months, but I guess it's been probably like 6 months. So,
Wow. Wow.
So I brought it to a different vet just to, so I didn't like the first opinion.
Yeah.
Even now, I'm like, they're salesmen. To me, vets are just like people who can be doctors, and they're not really high up on my list right now.
No. Well, Pete, appreciate you relating that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to wrap it up now.
Yep. I'm getting hungry.
Thank you for everything. Nice talking, Pete.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, and thank everyone in the chat.
Yeah, keep track of Kyle. See what he's doing, Pete.
Yeah, I started to follow it there. I'll check it out there later.
And check out Buck and Billy too. Buck and Billy Ray. You'll like them. You will.
We'll be on tomorrow night on our regular scheduled time, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yep. And everybody mind your strings.
Yes.
Watch the strings that are attached to you.
Yep.
Love you all.
Love you.